So, hello everybody. This is the Formula Use Defense Sites FUDS 101 orientation webinar. Um, I really hope you're having a great day and you're excited to come join us, and we want to see that excitement from you all as well. My name is Brian Jordan. I work with the Office of the Secretary of Defense. In the particular office I work in is the Office of the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Environmental Management and Restoration, and have oversight of the FUDS program. We're happy to have everyone here today, and we hope to provide you with an engaging and informative webinar. And I will highlight engaging. We will have a few places where we will be asking you to provide some input. So be ready with your mouse, be ready with your reactions in the React panel to provide some of that energy, because we really want to have as best we can. I know you all are all on mute, but we can at least engage with some of those reacts and the chat function. So the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers developed this presentation to give you an overview of the FUDS program. This webinar will provide useful information to Department of Defense personnel, regulators, and stakeholders, especially new personnel who may not be familiar with the program. So we welcome those that don't even understand what the FUDS acronym is. Welcome to the party, right? It is an interesting program. It is cleanup outside of our DoD installations and on transferred land. Most of that land transferred way in the past. So welcome. We posted the webinar slides and reference materials to the FUDS webpage on the DoD Environmental Safety and Occupational Health Network and Information Exchange, or better known as DNIX. Please feel free to download the documents, which are available at the link in the chat. And some of you may come on and you'll go, Brian, I don't know what those acronyms you're saying, USACE and FUDS and all these things. We actually helped think we've tried to help by providing you an acronyms list in those materials if you want to take a look at that. Later, we'll provide a link to a survey and we'll get that survey over to you. Please provide feedback. It's always helpful for us to develop these trainings or what the future trainings will look like based on those survey results. We are recording today's webinar. If many of you have noticed, you had to click on the little box that said, yes, I acknowledge your recording. That's so that we can make this training available up on the FUDS webpage on DNIX. And we'll be send the attendees an email after we're posting that recording. It'll be saved as a YouTube and have chapters and those type of things. So next slide, please, Amanda, if you don't mind. All right, some just really quick webinar rules. Before we begin, microphones and cameras are automatically turned off for other than the presenters. Please use the chat and react functions on Teams to answer check-in questions. We'll have a brief question and answer session at the end of the presentation. We encourage you to ask content-related questions during this time using the chat functions on Teams. So please don't hesitate to throw into the chat your questions, and then we'll try to organize and collate those and then get you answers as best we can at the end of the presentation. We just have so much material to get through. We want to make sure we can get through the material, but we don't want to hold up on your answers or on your questions so that we can provide you competent answers. If you do experience any technical difficulty, please email dodwebinars@bah.com, and we'll throw that into the chat so that you'll have that if you need to scroll to it if you end up with a technical issue. And then we can have that. And then so the chat functionality is there, the React functionality, those would be the two things. Please don't raise your hand because we really have no way to bring you off of the microphone easily. So use that React. I know it'd be sometimes you'll go think you're going to go hit the React and you hit the raise the hand. Just click it again and it'll lower your hand and that'd be fine. All right, next slide. So our presenters today, who are our key presenters? So Mr. Dave Nelson is the FUDS program manager in the Northwestern Division, and here's his bio if you want to go ahead and read through that. I've worked with Dave for over 20 years. Miss Amanda Sticker, civil engineer with Environmental and Munitions Center of Expertise out of Huntsville, Alabama, and have worked with Amanda for fewer years, but have always enjoyed the years I've worked with Amanda. And additionally, we have two state folks that will be presenting with us as well. Mr. Kalen Briggs with the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, and then Mr. Ruben Zamaripa from the Missouri Department of Natural Resources. And they will be providing that state perspective. So I want to test out your React functionality. We want to bring the energy for Amanda. So if you could please go up to that React button. And yeah, clapping hands are good. I was hoping, yeah, let's go with clapping hands. I'm going to go with a scream for her. But all right, Amanda, it's all you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us, Brian. That's we always love the React button to stay engaged. I am Amanda Sticker, just really excited to be here today. Our agenda today includes an introduction to the FUDS program, a brief overview of the FUDS, cleanup processes, and roles and responsibilities in the FUDS program, a team activity, and then we'll do wrap up and questions. But let's take a moment to walk through the purpose and key objectives of today's webinar. First, we're here to provide a foundational overview of the formerly used Defense Sites program, often referred to as FUDS. This session is designed to establish a common understanding of what the program is, why it exists, and how it operates within the broader environmental and munitions response framework. We'll also highlight USACE's roles and responsibilities. As the lead agency for the FUDS program, the Army Corps of Engineers has specific statutory and policy-driven duties from site inventory and prioritization to investigation, cleanup, and closeout. Next, we'll discuss opportunities for regulator and stakeholder engagement. Collaboration is essential to the program's success, and we want to emphasize the way stakeholders can actively participate, provide input, and support meaningful community outreach. And finally, the goal is to improve the FUDS program execution through this collaborative discussion. One important note before we begin, this webinar is intended to provide an overview. It's not going to be a deep dive into site-specific or technical details. If you're working on a particular site and need help applying that policy to a specific situation, please consult with your district point of contact or refer to additional guidance documents and resources, which we'll talk about later on today. Let's jump into the FUDS overview. All right, this is the time to engage. So how many of you have worked on a site where the federal government is responsible for the contamination but doesn't own the land? Please use that React function. It's at the top of the screen, and give us a thumbs up if you have worked on a site where the federal government's responsible for the contamination but doesn't own the land. All right, I'm seeing lots of thumbs up. So if you gave a thumbs up, you may have worked on the FUDS site. Land access and partnership is critical. To start building our shared understanding, let's define what qualifies a property as a formerly used defense site, or FUDS. FUDS properties are real estate that was once owned by, leased to, or otherwise possessed by the United States, and importantly, must have been under the jurisdiction of the Secretary of Defense at the time of DoD use. This distinction helps us separate properties under DoD's historical responsibilities from those owned by other federal agencies. Another key requirement is that the property must have been transferred from DoD control prior to October 17, 1986. That date marks the start of the FUDS program under the Defense Environmental Restoration Program, or DERP. FUDS properties must be located across the 50 states, the District of Columbia, U.S. territories, commonwealths, and other possessions. Essentially anywhere the U.S. jurisdiction where the Department of Defense previously operated but no longer does. The legal authority for taking action at these sites comes from Title 10 USC Code, Section 2701 C1B. This statute authorizes Secretary of Defense to carry out response action at eligible FUDS properties. These actions are performed in accordance with both CERCLA and DERB. Through these authorities, we address the release of hazardous substances, pollutants, or contaminants that resulted from past DoD activities. And finally, it's worth noting that states and other stakeholders may assist USACE by providing identifying properties that may not have been previously evaluated, but could potentially meet the FUDS eligibility criteria. This partnership approach helps ensure we're capturing that full scope of sites that may need investigation or cleanup. All right, what is the significance of October 17, 1986? Who wants to try a guess in the chat? We're looking for some engagement. Looking in the chat, what's the significance of that date, October 17, 1986? Dirt, property transfer, regular CERCLA. We're getting close. We're getting close. All right, I see it. Fantastic. It is, Sarah. So the significance of October 17, 1986 is that it marks the date when Congress established that Defense Environmental Restoration Program, DERP, under Title 10 USC 2701. It's originally part of the Superfund Amendments and the Reauthorization Act. That's SARA. This date is critical for the FUDS program because only properties that were transferred out of Department of Defense control before October 17, 1986 are eligible to be addressed under the FUDS program. Properties still under DoD control on or after that date fall under other cleanup programs, such as the Base Realignment and Closure, BRAC, or Active Installations Restoration and programs. In short, October 17, 1986 defines that legal cutoff for when a property must have been transferred out of DoD control to be eligible for the FUDS cleanup. It's what legally separates FUDS sites from other DoD responsibilities. This slide's going to walk us through the legal and organizational foundation of the FUDS program under a broader DERB. You can see at the top level, DERP was established under Title 10 of the USC Code, which authorized environmental restoration at DoD facilities under the Secretary of Defense's jurisdiction. This includes both currently active and formerly used properties. From there, moving down, the FUDS program was created specifically to address legacy contamination at properties no longer owned by DoD, but where past defense activities may have caused environmental issues. Under the DoD Instruction 4715.07, the Secretary of the Army is designated as the lead agent for carrying out cleanup responsibilities at FUDS sites, regardless of which military branch previously used the property. The Secretary of the Army then delegated execution authority to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, who acts as that mission execution agent. And that means that USACE is responsible for managing the actual site investigations and the response actions. And finally, execution happens at our USACE divisions and districts, who coordinate with our regulators, our stakeholders, and our communities to implement cleanup activities across the country. The FUDS program is structured to ensure that we leverage expertise across all of USACE to execute our mission effectively. At the district level, teams are engaging with our key partners, including Military Munition Design Centers, the MMDC, for munitions-related work. We've got the USACE headquarters and the Environmental Munitions Center of Expertise, the EMCX, for technical support and policy consistency, as well as the districts are working with our key stakeholders. Each support element plays a very specific role. Our military munition design centers assist with project planning and solution development for munitions responses. They ensure our military munitions support services, which you might have heard as M2S2, Those activities are performed safely, consistently, and efficiently across the executing programs and the planning and execution of work where military munitions have been, will be, or suspected to be encountered. The EMCX helps interpret policy and provides direct support to the district. And Headquarters USACE oversees the program execution, tracking, and performance. As you can see on the map, each division supports multiple districts, and the system is designed to share resources and expertise across the enterprise. The design centers, the divisions, headquarters, and CX are great resources, but your primary point of contact will be the district. We're leveraging resources, and you have a one-stop shop with your district program manager, that PM, as your resource to get any of the answers that you need. And you'll note on this screen, this is right here, a FUDS map. You may have seen other USACE maps that show Civil Works boundary, but this is our FUDS boundary map. Regulators are key stakeholders in our FUDS cleanup, and their involvement is not only encouraged, but it's required under federal law and DoD policy. Engagement is driven by CERCLA, the National Contingency Plan, NCP, and several DoD regulations, including DIRT management guidance and FUDS program regulations. States, you all play a central role in shaping site-level actions, especially through the SMAP and DSMOAs, which outline how USACE and each state will work together. These partnerships are vital for ensuring cleanups meet both federal and state standards. And as mentioned earlier, regulator involvement is grounded in statute and policy. In support of transparency and effective collaboration, we want to highlight two publicly available resources that can assist regulators and your stakeholders. First is the FUDS Program Handbook, which outlines policies, procedures, and expectations specific to the FUDS program. This is a great resource for understanding how FUDS is implemented. I'll share later on today how you can download that. And then second is the USACE Publications website, where you'll find the official engineering manuals, engineering regulations, and the engineering pamphlets that guide technical execution. These tools are available to the public and can help our stakeholders stay aligned with how USACE approaches environmental restoration. One important note, some of our interim guidance documents, such as the EM 200 and 115 IGD, those are not currently posted on that publication site because they are still undergoing formal review. Stakeholder engagement is a cornerstone of the FUDS program. So here's a question for you to consider. How often do you collaborate on the SMAPs or in the FUDS forum? Are you an active participant? While there are multiple formal avenues that support meaningful engagement from state regulators, federal land managers, and the public throughout the FUDS project lifestyle. First is DSMOA, that Defense and State Memorandum of Agreement program. It was created to support and expedite environmental restoration at DoD sites, including FUDS, by providing that framework for reimbursing states for their oversight. The DSMOA portal is a centralized hub for information and coordination. Next is the SMAP, that State Management Action Plan, which is developed in partnership with each of our states. It allows for early and ongoing involvement. It helps verify that inventory of FUDS property in each state and factors in state cleanup priorities. SMAP also supports the development of that relative risk site evaluation, the RRSEs, and the MRSPP scores, the Munitions Response Site Prioritization Protocol scores, which inform sequencing decisions for installation restoration and munitions response work. Additionally, SMAPs help align that life cycle work plans with state expectations. We also host the FUDS Forum, which is a venue for open communication and collaborative problem solving. It promotes ideas sharing and gives stakeholders a chance to elevate issues to the National FUDS Forum, where broader solutions can be considered. Another opportunity for collaboration is with our federal land managers, the FLMs, especially during the pre-award phase of the project. This collaboration is not a one-time exchange. It continues post-award to ensure mutual understanding of objectives and to address land management priorities. On that right-hand side of the slide, we highlight specific opportunities for input throughout the cleanup process. Participating in priority scoring through the RRSC and the MRSPP updates, contributing to project planning documents like the management action plans, SMAPs, and our work plans or the UFP QAP, and through circular related documents, providing feedback during and after completion of response activities, and engaging our restoration advisory boards, those RABs, and community notifications, which help ensure transparency and trust with the public. The goal is to create that transparency, build trust, and incorporate feedback into how we plan and carry out our environmental processes. Now, please allow me to introduce Ruben Zamarripa. He's a guest speaker who will share his insights in collaboration. Ruben is an environmental program supervisor for the Missouri Department of Natural Resources. He has over 30 years of experience with environmental compliance and cleanup work in both the private and government sectors. Ruben, thanks for speaking on our behalf. Share some of your insights, please.
Thank you, Amanda, for the nice lead-in and introduction to what I want to highlight in these next couple of slides. This slide captures the typical or classic regulator engagement opportunities in the DIRT FUDS cleanup process. The first bullet is just clarifying the state's roles as we engage with our core point of contact. The state's role is to serve as the lead regulatory agency, since many of the FUDS sites are not listed on the NPL and EPA typically not involved. The Corps is the lead cleanup agency. The rest of these bullets outline key services the state agreed to provide under our Defense State Memorandum of Agreement, like with the identification of applicable or relevant and appropriate requirements. For a particular site and or project, other ways for engagement include concurrence or approvals of key CERCLA documents like the Record of Decision and 5-year reviews, support with public meetings and outreach, and obtaining regulatory support for response complete or site closeout actions. Slide 2. The next slide. This slide highlights other ways to engage in the FUDS cleanup program. These engagement opportunities deal more with the management of the FUDS program. Some examples include helping facilitate rights of entry, developing state memorandum or state management action plans for the management, tracking, and prioritization of your state's FUDS inventory, working with the Corps as a point of contact for your state to help with the Military Munitions Response Program interim risk management inquiries, since communications include elected officials. Participating in your local FUDS forum for the planning, scheduling, and prioritization of FUDS cleanup work in your state, and helping with the initiation of the PRP process by sending letters to PRPs from your Attorney General's office and letters to the Department of Justice if necessary. Now, I will turn this back over to Amanda. Thank you.
Thanks, Ruben. Lots of ways that you've been engaged personally, but let's poll the audience. What is the earliest that you've been engaged in a FUDS project execution or collaboration meeting, such as SMAPs, FUDS forums, DISMOA? Looking in the chat, please write your answer in the chat. What's the earliest you've been engaged, or how have you been engaged? Looking in the chat. All of the above, Natalie. All right, pre-jet meetings, that joint execution plans, fantastic. Start of the FUDS program, scopes of work. All right, fantastic. Thanks, guys, for sharing. I appreciate that. New to FUDS, well, good to have you. FUDS is unique. We're addressing DoD releases of properties prior to October 17, 1986. And these properties were previously owned by DOD, meaning we must work with our property owners and our regulators on cleanup. FUDS does not certify that the property is clean, but we address that DOD contamination. The FUDS inventory from the fiscal year 23 annual report to Congress, ARC, shows that out of 10,110 properties evaluated, we determined 7,122 were FUDS eligible. In that first pie chart, you can see the breakout of the 7,222 eligible properties. We have with and without projects, and breaking that down in that first pie chart, 37% of the total properties have projects. On that next pie chart, we have 5,452 eligible projects, broken down into projects that have achieved response complete and yet to achieve response complete. This project count includes the PRP, the potentially responsible parties, and the ROE, refusal projects. We have achieved response complete on 70% of projects. Note that projects have different categories, so let's look at that now. All right, while project types are not unique to FUDS, the naming convention is where we talk about property and project. You may have heard installation, site, or Superfund site, an operable unit. Now, looking at this bold blue boundary right here, that is representing of our FUDS property boundary. And starting with the non-CERCLA types, we could potentially have BDDR, the building demolition and debris removal, or hazardous, toxic, and radioactive waste if there's no CERCLA release. Your CERCLA project types include HTRW, or it could also be referred to later on as IRP, Installation Restoration Program. But if you're looking for project types with FUDS, they typically call it HTRW. We also have MMRP, and then MMRP with CWM, chemical warfare material. And then you can have PRP sites with both HTRW and MMRP. You may have multiple projects with only one project type within a FUDS property boundary, or you could have multiple project types. FUDS does investigate when the contamination is tracked outside of the boundary, such as, you know, if there's range fans extending from the property boundary, or you could be tracking plumes associated with HTRW. All right, here's a question for you. Does eligibility of a FUDS property automatically mean a project will be initiated? And even for those newbies, let's take a guess. Is it yes or no? Please write your answer in the chat. Just take a guess. I'm seeing lots and lots and lots of no's. All right, congrats guys. You are so right. The answer is no. Once a property is found eligible, then we're going to start the next phase to see if a project needs to be created. Stay tuned. Dave is going to talk about this later in more detail. Now, please allow me to turn it over to Mr. Dave Nelson, who will present the cleanup process in FUDS. Dave, over to you, sir.
The activities associated with the cleanup process at FUDS can be organized into 4 broad categories: identification, investigation, cleanup, and long-term management. It begins at the identification and flows from left to right, but depending on the facts and information collected along the way, investigation, cleanup, and/or long-term management may not be required. Accordingly, there are exit points along the way, such as the end of the site inspection or upon determination of no action as documented in a record of decision. There are unique requirements for FUDS when viewed in detail, but even these are likely to be generally required in any cleanup process. As an example, the steps depicted here include a FUDS-specific process to prepare a Findings and Determination of Eligibility, the FDE, as well as an Inventory Project Report, the IMPR. Those are for property and project eligibility, respectively. While the particular process of documentation associated with the identification category of this process flow is unique to FUDS, identification is not, in and of itself, a unique process. All along these process flow, there are engagement opportunities, and we'll cover those as we progress to the next several slides. Also, as the name suggests, as Amanda indicated, the program seeks to address sites that were formerly used by the Department of Defense, which were transferred prior to October 17, 1986. Accordingly, we must be granted access to properties for which we seek to investigate and clean up. FUDS documents the agreement or invitation in a right of entry. We start those right of entries during the site inspection phase. The findings and determination of eligibility contains the regulator and community engagement aspect. We look for information from the regulators and community as we build a history of the activities at the property. Evidence informing an eligibility determination comes from archive searches and a review of property records such as deeds and leases. But we also review information obtained through coordination with regulators and affected tribes. The result of this step is an FEE indicating a property is either eligible or ineligible for FUDS. If a determination that a property is ineligible, this is the exit point. If the property is determined eligible, we proceed to the next step, the preliminary assessment. The preliminary assessment contains information on releases or threatened releases. Facts contained within the PA form the basis for development of the inventory project report, the EMPR. The EMPR documents the outcomes of the PA and determination by USACE of project eligibility. The EMPR includes a summary of the PA, a summary of property and projects, as well as property and project maps. Early communication with the regulator and community aids in the collection of facts that support the project eligibility determination. This early engagement also aids in establishment of a common understanding of project definition and helps to inform the prioritization process. Over the next 3 slides, we're going to step through the FUDS property and project eligibility, starting at, well, the first part, property eligibility. Property eligibility is recorded in the FDE. Regulators and landowners are provided notice when a property eligibility determination is complete. It's crucial that our stakeholders provide any information relevant to the property, as early coordination during the property evaluations will allow the USACE, EPA, the state, affected tribes to be certain that available information regarding the environmental condition is taken into account before property eligibility determinations are finalized. The FUDS handbook includes worksheet 3-1 titled Identification of Real Property for Consideration of Inclusion in the FUDS Inventory. This form can be used by federal or state agencies, tribal authorities, local officials, landowners, or members of the public to identify real property for consideration of inclusion in the FUDS inventory. Just again, a highlight, as Amanda indicated, of all of the FDEs that have been generated with respect to the FY23 report to Congress, 7,222 are associated with eligible properties. FUDS eligible properties are then evaluated for potential FUDS eligible projects. A preliminary assessment is prepared, the PA. Following the PA, the EMPR is prepared, and the EMPR uses information presented in the PA to establish a basis for project recommendations. It's also prepared even if no projects are recommended. Early coordination during the development of new and updated EMPRs will allow the USACE, EPA, the state, and affected tribes to be certain that available environmental information is taken into account before project eligibility determinations are finalized. The PM District notifies the lead regulatory agency of proposed actions at the earliest opportunity and when funding is available for the approved project or projects in accordance with the annual work plan. The PM District may request HQ USACE headquarters approval to re-examine up to 5 properties per year per state. Re-examination may occur if new information indicates potential DoD contamination or by mutual agreement between USACE and a state, tribe, EPA, or other stakeholder. Those requests must be submitted by letter or email. Again, of all of the eligible projects in the inventory, 70% have achieved response complete. And those definitions for response complete are provided in the DERP manual and the FUDS handbook, but essentially it means that we've met our remedial action objectives or no response action is or was required. Next, we have the IMPER, which includes the project type, which Amanda went through earlier. After we have the IMPER and we have the projects approved, we work on sequencing. For the munitions projects, the munitions response site prioritization protocol, or the munitions response site score, is factored into this decision. On HTRW projects, the relative risk score is part of the decision. Other factors, including input from regulators and stakeholders, are also considered during sequencing. All right, we've got another engagement opportunity. So we're interested to learn about your experience with the identification aspect for FUDS. Looking to see how many of you have seen an FDE and or an IMPER. Looking for thumbs up if you have, a surprised face if not. Not surprising that we've got a lot of surprised faces, but I've seen a lot of people who have that early experience. If you get an opportunity to look through those, they give you a lot of history and background about the project approval status. All righty. So next up, if the project was found to be ineligible, what's the process to have USACE look at it again? Select from the following. Submit, and so you're going to indicate in the chat by letter. So just A, B, C, D. You're going to submit a new FUDS eligibility application. Request reexamination. B, request reexamination, submitting new evidence of FUDS eligibility with a request for review. C, file an appeal with USACE headquarters. Or D, wait 5 years and reapply.
Lots of B's in the chat, Dave.
I think we did a good job. Yeah. Or they bring a lot of knowledge in with them. Either way, I think that's great. All righty, moving on to the next slide. So I don't know if you remember that green box from earlier, the flow chart. Once the project is established, it must be assessed for how it fits into sequencing. And this aligns with our current process, as well as the 2024 December memo titled Holistic Approach to Relative Risk and Site Prioritization that was issued by the Office of Secretary of Defense. Regulators, when a new project is created, this is a good time to look at the MRSVP or relative risk and evaluate how that fits into your current prioritization list. This gives us the opportunity to reevaluate the work plan and see how we might need to adjust. The FUDS forum and the SMAP are good opportunities to discuss the work plan and prioritization. Now I'd like you to allow me to introduce Kaylin. Kaylin Briggs is the Superfund Section Manager with the Remediation and Redevelopment Division of the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy. Been there since 2021. He oversees the 64 Superfund sites and majority of the federal facilities within the state. Prior to working there at Eagle, with his geological background, he worked in the environmental industry since 2012. Kaylin, please tell us from your perspective opportunities for engagement.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. So before we discuss the regulator engagement, I wanted to briefly just cover the primary steps in the core work plan build process. This is very high level, so this is going to definitely brush right over some of the details. But the first half of the fiscal year, the work plan is kind of being planned and developed at the local district level, while of course they work with the division as well. Then in the third quarter, it's nearly complete, and it's really just being polished at that stage. And then by the fourth quarter, it has left the district and the division and is officially under the headquarter review for prioritization against the rest of the sites across the greater program. But you'll note the arrow on the slide here. The program or the process is continuous and cyclical. So just understand the work plan building never really stops. So state input on the work plan is always generally welcomed and received at any time, but we really want to focus on when it is actually most advantageous, which we have learned here in Michigan that to be in the first or second fiscal year quarter. During this time, the district is determining what projects are higher in priority, and the work plan is still in an early draft form. So we have learned that from experience that this is when the state, the territory, or the federal landowner has the largest and best opportunity to convey what is important to them and could perhaps influence this decision making. And before we move on, I do want to provide a bit of an example of a lesson that we learned here in Michigan. In 2021, the Corps provided us a unique opportunity to get a small deep dive into this work plan build process just to enhance our knowledge. And here we learned generally when our affiliated district was evaluating the projects for the current work plan build. And now alongside of this, historically, our annual FUDS forum, which we do between the Corps and the state, was held actually in April, all the way in the third quarter. So we collaborated and we partnered with the Louisville district. They wanted to give a shout out to the awesome, great team of the Louisville district. We all thought it prudent to schedule our FUDS forum meeting earlier in the fiscal year so the state's priorities list could be discussed and leveraged into the work plan build in a more meaningful way. So before, we discussed the state's priorities after the work plan had been drafted, and most of our input was deemed to be considered for the next fiscal year, where obviously it was easy to get lost in the shuffle 6 months later when the next work plan construction begins. So the big key takeaway here is talk work plan, talk state priorities, and do it as early as you can in the fiscal year. And I'll turn it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, now back to our overview. We're moving past property and project eligibility and into investigation, cleanup, and long-term management. As indicated before, regulator involvement is built into the foundation of the program. It's in the statutes. Guidance and policy that form the framework for FUDS execution, they go much further. We've had engagement thus far in our process, and we're going to keep that focus. We're going to be accessing the lands and collecting information that leads us to a decision on cleanup. Prior to this point, actual on-property activity has been minimal. But now that the right of entry is needed, that invitation to come onto the lands associated with the FUDS, that's critical. As a regulator, we may be coming to you to help us communicate with the landowner relative to the need for access to their property. The Statewide Management Action Plan, SMAP, and the Department of Defense and State Memorandum of Agreement provide a mechanism for development of plans for investigation and cleanup for FUDS-eligible properties and reimbursement for DESMO-eligible services provided by the state. Before we move to the final slides in this section, I'd like to open it back up to Kalen for him to share his thoughts on this subject.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. I'll keep this brief. But, in the spirit of DESMOA that most of us find ourselves operating within, part of that spirit is to communicate. And although there are many steps in this process, that prescribe that engagement, you don't have to wait for these specific spots in the process that do that. But instead, it can be any time. Pick up the phone, and even better if you can get in touch in person. All of us states, and I'm sure federal landowners as well, they want the engagement, and in fact, we welcome it. So communicate and communicate and communicate. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you. Once again, opportunities for input and engagement are integrated into the process. These opportunities help us keep the community and regulators informed and engaged at the FUDS. Some are required by statute, others are incorporated by policy or other project execution process. But all of these are contributors to the success in the FUDS cleanup process. Brian, would you take over from here, please?
I really appreciate that. Thanks, Amanda, Dave, Kalen, for all the inputs they provided, and Ruben, as we went through the FUDS overview. I think we are a little bit ahead of schedule, but that's okay. That's good, right? That means that we can have more Q&A at the end. But so before we go into a break, I would like to pose some quick engagement activity here. So using the chat, please answer the following 3 questions as best you can answer them, right? And as you do that, if you could just denote which question you're answering. So please format your response for Q1 or A1. Either A1 or Q1, you would just say what your answer is. So in what processes have you been involved for question 1? Question 2, from your perspective, what defines successful collaboration on your project? And question 3, what opportunities do you see for improving collaboration between federal, state, and local partners on these projects? I know that these look like very in-depth questions, and I'm going to give you 10 minutes to kind of go on break, take a little bit of time, stand up, think through, check your emails, do a few things, but please try to come back and fill in some of these answers, because we'd like to, as we get closer to the end of the break, we'll go ahead and pull up some of the answers and speak to them, is what my goal would be. So for right now, we're going to go on to break. We'll leave this screen up, and we will come back at 2:55. All right, I'll come off of mute here just really quick and just kind of hit on some of these answers that we've received. And 100% I am jealous as well, Amanda, as far as, and I was involved with the setting up of kind of the document system in the FUDS program back in like 2000. But yeah, I am jealous of the Air Force's admin record system and the ease with which I think you can pull documents from there. I'd be interested in some of the regulator perspective as to whether they feel it's easy to use that system, but it seems easy from an OSD perspective when we're looking for something. But hitting on some of these answers, one of them I will say, you know, I hear you on the RAB, as far as the RAB shouldn't be just a check the box and give me an update on the schedule. It should be really a meaningful engagement and try to have that listening time to get the perspective of all the stakeholders. I will, one that's near and dear, I see from TCEQ, the blanket rejection of ARRs. I know that's what it seems like that is happening, and I see that there was a few people that piled on that one. Yeah, I definitely agree. We should be meeting and having a discussion as to why or what those concerns really are, and how do we move forward, even though it may not be an ARR or meet the definition of an ARR, but how do we take into account some of the things that we need to do in order to proceed on with our circular response. I know that is a bit of a hot topic within the program as far as ARRs and how ARRs are looked at. Let's see. Yeah, that I'm looking at Jerry Helton here, acquiring a complete list of regulators and stakeholders early in the process, right? Having that input early in the process and being able to maintain that list, right? Particularly with many of our projects going to last, you know, our munitions projects in particular are going to last over 100 years for sure. And just having that check-in to make sure we're still talking to the right people, or that something on the ground hasn't changed, is an important aspect of the work we do for sure. But really appreciate you're all taking the opportunity. We will work to try to save this, because this is great as I scroll through and look at some of the answers to the questions, and we'll be looking at trying to save this into a Word document of some kind to put with the video, because I think anybody that would be coming in to look at this webinar, this is it'd be good for them to be able to see some of the answers you all provided in your perspective on the tools. So I will go, we will come back officially so we can move to the next slide. And it looks like I hand off to Dave, because Dave has his camera up and he's ready to go. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Brian. So the FUDS community is more than USACE, the Department of Defense, and the Department of Army. It includes landowners, contractors, the federal and state regulators, local agencies, project stakeholders. Those project stakeholders may include, but are not limited to, Restoration Advisory Board members, we heard from the chat, property owners, federally recognized tribal agencies, and our federal land managers. The nexus of that community is the district project delivery team. Everything flows through the district, and that district is the heart of execution. So please reach out to your district point of contact if you have questions or concerns regarding a FUDS or potential FUDS in your state or region. So right before our break, we were highlighting the investigation and cleanup elements of FUDS program execution. I mentioned that some of what we do is required by statute, some by policy or guidance, some because it's what we need for a particular project and those actions, but not necessarily detailed that way, fall under statute, policy, or guidance. Table 8-1 of the FUDS handbook shown here is a reference our FUDS team uses to identify and plan community relations activities. While we seek to keep the community engaged and informed throughout the process, the intensity and frequency of engagement varies as the project advances. We're engaging with you in advance of and alongside our community engagement activities. Just to highlight a few but critical activities, community interviews help us with detailing the history of the FUDS and gaining an understanding of how best to engage and communicate with the community. The Community Relations Plan, the CRP, details how we involve and communicate with the public. The local information repository that contains a copy of the administrative record file is established to help inform the public. The public can reference the information as they engage in public meetings, review the proposed plan, and provide comments in association with the published proposed plan. Especially for those activities that require public notice, we might see an increase in intensity of engagement. The public notice, public comment period, and public meeting is an association with the issuance of the proposed plan. It's one example of a period during which we could expect to see an increase in community engagement. Public comment periods and opportunities for meetings are great avenues to ask questions and get more information on the project, from the MRSPPs and RRSEs to other document reviews. We seek continual engagement. On the next slide, we have several program resources listed. You can refer to the handout for more information on each website, but I will note that for DESMOA, you must register to gain access. With that, turn it back over to Brian.
Thank you so much, Dave. So we have another participant engagement here. So of all the stakeholders involved in FUDS, from regulators to property owners to federal land managers to federally recognized tribal nations, whose role do you think is most often misunderstood or overlooked, and why? So go ahead and throw those in the chat. Galen has his perspective for sure. FLMs and tribal nations. Yeah, I agree. And I really appreciate you all throwing things property owners, right? So Bill, that's a great one, right? Those property owners and the ROE process. But I think we see there are quite a few folks that are putting in those tribal nations. Yeah, that is a complicated discussion when we are talking with the tribal nations. One, many of the actions we take with the tribal nation would not fall under the state regulators' prerogative, right? So generally they come under either the tribal nation has their own environmental programs, or they're using EPA, the federal EPA. So that is kind of a switch as far as the regulator role whenever we're dealing with the tribal nations. And then there is also the aspect of the Native American lands Environmental Mitigation Program, or NALEMP. Sorry, I had to pause there to make sure I got my words with the acronym correct. But the NALEMP program and the activities that can be conducted to assist tribes with impacted lands from DOD's past activities, those sometimes would fall under NALEMP. So quite often as a regulator, you may see the project and you go, well, when are you going to take a FUDS action, or when are you going to perform FUDS activities at this project? And we will say, well, we have already started certain NALEMP activities that will assist us when it comes time to perform those FUDS activities. or sometimes in Alaska, you'll see those things happening hand in hand on the ANCSA properties. So, but thank you so much for those answers. And our next slide, slide 40 here, we're going to move into some team activities. Hopefully you'll enjoy these activities, and we're going to try to build a little bit of teamwork here as far as, so when we said team activity, we really picture yourselves as all sitting together. I want you to, of the following areas, so where you're sitting or who you support most often, even if you're a remote employee like me, I live in Phoenix, Arizona, support the Pentagon. But if you don't mind, throw in which regions, A, B, C, or D. So Northeast region, Northwest region, Southeast region, or Southwest region. Go ahead and throw that into the chat, which one you're associated with. I want you to, so I want all the A's to use the react. Let me see. All the A's, please react with a heart so that you all know that you're the hearts. Okay, Nicole raised her hand, but that's okay. She can lower her hand and then go to the react and use her heart. And then all the B's, if you wouldn't mind, give us a thumbs up. Okay, there's your B. So keep track of all those people that use their thumbs up, please. And then our C's, we're going to go ahead and clap. And then if you don't mind, so our Southwest region folks, you guys are going to laugh for me, if you don't mind. All right, so now you know whose group you're in, right? So keep track of that, because now I know you can react to your group. You know your group. You know which ones are A's, B's, C's, and D's. Now we're going to move into our team activities, and I will go ahead and hand over to Amanda, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely, Brian. Thanks. All right, guys. So we're going to ask a series of questions, and they're going to be directed towards each group. Only the group that the question's designed to can respond. All right. So ready? We're going to start with the Northeast region. And guys, these questions are not designed to play to see what y'all are doing, where y'all are pulling it from, because there's, just like with a math problem, there are more than one ways to solve it. But we want to see how you all are utilizing resources, and then we're going to show you another way that you can use it. So Northeast region, ready? All right, if you were trying to find out how many properties were FUDS eligible in the state of Maryland, where would you look? And then where would you look to find out how many properties are eligible for projects are eligible for FUDS, and how many of those projects have achieved response complete? Please put your answers in the chat if you're with the Northeast region. So Northeast region, how do you come up with these resources? How do you find this stuff? All right, I'm seeing FUDS GIS, asking the Dismoa section staff. I know we have more A's than this, the Northeast region.
That's why I went through that drill. We saw, what did I make the A's do?
Start calling out.
I think the hearts. Yeah, I'm going to make you hearts. You better get with it.
No clue. Well, thank you, Dwayne, for your honesty. I appreciate that. All right, I'm still seeing, I don't see a lot of people reacting, such as Tiom. I saw you had an A2, internal database. All right, FUDS portal, FUDS GIS. All right, we had a few brave people. Let's jump in, guys, because I know we have a lot of new people. Just like that, this recording is going to be available on Denix. Please, use the next slide. It's going to be a video that we walk through. Use this as a resource. We also, as Dave mentioned, we've got all of the websites posted on one handout that are applicable for the FUDS program. I created like a little short intro on what each website does and how it's useful, as well as the link. We've got the acronyms list, and then we also have a FUDS point of contact list on that Denix site. So use all of those things. But let's jump in. Let's figure out how we're going to tackle this question. So A way to find out how many properties were FUDS eligible for the state of Maryland is on our FUDS portal. That link is at the bottom right-hand side, where you can find out how many projects are also eligible for FUDS and how many of those have achieved response complete. The FUDS portal is accessible to the public. You don't need a username or account to get into this FUDS portal. The information is available 24/7. So after you go to the FUDS portal, at the top of the screen, you are going to see resources. There's your home button. You'll see resources, EMS, which stands for Executive Management System, and then GIS, that is the Geographic Information System. That is your top screen. But then as soon as you hit, just to start out, we're going to click on the EMS, and then you get that second thing that comes up. You will see, since I pulled this video, that this was from the 2022 Annual Report to Congress data. Since I have recorded this video, it has been updated to 2023. So you might see slightly different numbers. But to get to the information for the state of Maryland, we're going to click on EMS and then inventory and the next property eligibility. We're looking for the state of Maryland. So you can either scroll down or type it in your state search. But after you find Maryland, note the columns are organized on the left-hand side by property and on the right-hand side by projects. Properties is going to tell you what's eligible versus ineligible properties and how many of those eligible properties have projects on them. It looks like for Maryland, we've got about 87 eligible properties. For projects, total number of projects and how many of those have achieved response complete. For Maryland, we have 104 projects, 55 at response complete. Ruben, I'm now going to turn it over to you. Please provide your insights, sir, and how this is applicable to you, sir.
Thank you, Amanda. This really helps us, all these resources that Amanda just outlined here. It's really good as far as knowing the workload in your state and staffing for resources and knowing what's coming. So these are great resources just to help you manage your FUDS cleanup program in your states with inventory, response complete, as Amanda already mentioned. And it keeps the status of your state kind of up to date. Many times you might get legislative inquiries as far as what's going on with this property. So those are all great benefits, what Amanda outlined for us to use. So thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Ruben. Appreciate having you again, sir. All right, guys, don't get stuck on that FUDS portal yet. Northeast region, you all did fantastic, but we're going to switch over to the Northwest region now. So Northwest region, these were my Bs. If you're trying to find out what was in the FUDS fiscal year 2025 work plan for the state of Oregon, where would you go? Or do you even know that we have it available? Where would you look to find out the planned execution for the state of Oregon? All right, Northwest region, I'm looking in the chat to see your answers, guys, and go. Northwest region, all of my Bs. So I'm going to go back up to my Bs, Brian. So Francis, Andrew, Gabriella, I'm calling you guys out. Dustin, Todd, not naming anybody, but okay, I see no clue. Okay, fantastic. This is good that we're sharing this then. The Excel work plan. All right, EMS, MPA. Let's jump to it then because I'm still seeing a little bit of uncertainty. And that's okay because I know we've got a lot of new people. The SMAP. Good, Dustin. Thanks for sharing. All right, so if I was in your shoes and I was looking for the work plan for the state of Oregon or looking for that planned execution, let's see what resources we have available. Again, we're going to go back to that FUDS portal site that is open to the public. And to find out what's in the work plan for Oregon and that planning execution, we're going to access the FUDS portal. We're going to click on resources and then the public files. That FUDS work plan for fiscal year 25 is a PDF icon that you can click on and download right there. The official work plan identifies the projects and activities within the FUDS program that may receive fiscal year 25 funding. The work plan includes a listing of all the planned projects as of 1 October 2024. But please note, the work plan is not considered final and may be amended throughout the year to include additional projects, including based on your feedback, like Kaylin brought out before. All right, so we're going to scroll down to Oregon to see what's in the work plan. You can tell there's columns for state, territory, division, district, the FUDS property number, the property name, each of the FUDS property project numbers, the project category that we talked about earlier. Now let's go back to that main page right there, the FUDS portal on those resources tabs. We talked about that you have access to the FUDS handbook. This is where you can download it right here. And we also have the MRSPP fact sheet as of March 2022, but this has been updated since then to this year. Now let's look at that planning execution for Oregon. We're going to click on that EMS tab right there, and then the funding execution, CTC, and then selecting a report. We want to know by state for Oregon, so we're going to click on that CTC by state. If you scroll down to Oregon, you'll quickly realize it's only going to be for BDDR, so we can't just scroll down on this site. So what you want to do is type in Oregon at the top, and that's going to give us our BDDR, our IRP, or what we also call the HTRW, and the MMRP. We have no planning execution for the BDDR, but we do outline funding for both the IRP and the MMRP. All numbers right here are shown in thousands of dollars as denoted by that $K. Ruben, I'm going to turn it back over to you to provide your insights, sir, and share your lessons learned. Ruben?
Yes. Thank you, Amanda, again for that. Obviously, Amanda covered a lot of acronyms and materials, and so for some of you that's new, there's a lot of good resources there and a lot to learn. But I also just want, in my case, when I was learning how to do this and understand what's all these nuances associated with this and what's available, I would always look to my local FUDS forum meetings with our district, and I also would look at the as far as for IMPRS and things like that. And if you can't get a hold of anybody in your district or you're having trouble, you can also reach out to your representatives for the FUDS Forum work group. I think that's going to be handed out as part of this webinar. So thank you, Amanda.
Awesome. Thanks, Ruben. All right. So for my B's, guys, you all were very, very quiet. Was this resource helpful, showing you the resources that we have available and where you can get to it? Again, I'm looking in the chat, but was that helpful to you to know where that information was? Because I know a lot of people don't realize that that's out there for public information. Yep, Alaska's on there too. All right, not seeing anything good, bad, or indifferent. So let's move on. Southwest region. All right, these are my C's, guys. Southwest region, if you identify with them, how do you utilize the management action plan, that map? And how does the map help a person with no background knowledge of the project? Southwest region, please put your answers in the chat. Looking for my C's. And again, you can be very transparent and say, Amanda, I don't know how this is helpful. I've never heard of a map. Oh, Southwest was D. Natalie, thank you. Management action plan. I've got 2.5 people that are responding. And I know we had more in the Southwest region. All right, let's jump in then, guys. Seeing a lot of question marks. Hopefully this is going to be a good resource for you all later. So let's access that map. It's going to outline your total multi-year environmental cleanup program for a FUDS property. The document will help you define the cleanup program requirements and provide that environmental comprehensive approach with your associated cost and the outlook to conduct future investigations and response actions at each of the FUDS projects within that property. For the map information, you can either have a property or a state in mind that you'll want to search. So we're going to go back to that FUDS forum again. It's a good resource. We're going to click on EMS, and then we're going to click on inventory, and then that management action plan, the map. You'll see a drop down for instructions that provide an overview. And so if you have the name of a property, you can use that, state, whatever. But we're going to look for Camp Swift that's located in Texas. So after you put in Camp Swift, we are going to select that, and then the map will come up. You can tell it's a smaller screen. There's a rotate view function, there's a draw, there's a fit to page, and increase font. But even if you did all of that, in my opinion, it still makes it really small. So my preference is just go over to the side and download the document. All right, so once you've downloaded that document and you've pulled it up, you'll see the property name for this title that's at the top. And then there's also the date that we are reporting as for this map right here. This is current as of fiscal year 22 ARC, that annual report to Congress. And then the next page right here, we have the table of contents. This outlines your property level information, the cleanup strategy, the IRP, which we also call the HTRW. We have MMRP, we've got community involvement, and then we've got that breakdown of both IRP and MMRP project descriptions in the appendices. Project summaries, you're going through all of these. The project summaries right here, you can see all of the projects in that far left-hand column. It's going to give you the categories, the names of all of it, that legal driver, which is typically CERCLA. Maybe we have RCRA. If you have an MMRP score for the HTRW or the RRSC for the IRP HTRW. You've got status showing that it's complete or underway, the remedy in place, and then the response complete dates. Lots of good information all right here, and it's categorized for every project. You'll also see the cleanup. Then we're breaking it down into the IRP, but this is your funding to date. Those are your costs that we have associated with it. From the IRP, then we also jump into the MMRP with all of those project specific details. You've got 5-year reviews and then the project descriptions. Here's your funding to date for the MMRP side. In this section right here, we've got community involvement, which outlines your restoration advisory boards and the technical assistance for public participation, the TAP. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see if a RAB was formed, and if so, the year it started, as well as your RAB members, without providing specific names. Lots of good information right here, and it gives you an overview of all of this stuff. Then moving past here, this is where all of the meat is in your appendices. This is going to provide details on each project that you have on your property, both for the IRP or HTRW and the MMRP sections. So you can see you've got project descriptions, your status, here's your MRSPP score, all of those things for each and every single project that we have. I'm now going to turn it over to Kalen to share his insight on how he utilizes the map. Kalen, over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. So often the state is usually one of the first, contacts for any kind of entity that is looking for any information regarding some kind of environmental concern related to the real property or even the environment. And for us, we have a pretty significant amount of FUDs that exist throughout our state, most of which we don't have some readily available knowledge, or we don't even have projects that are active, or perhaps it was even closed out a long time ago. So for us to answer those questions, to be able to, give them some kind of information and inquiry, this map is a fast way for us to find something to communicate to the public on. Of course, we usually always defer to the Corps for, more information for their questions, but this is a bit of a one-stop shop. It gives us some kind of information we can give to the public. We probably don't already have this information memorized, and it's something we can also refer to the public for themselves to go look at and review. So it's a pretty handy resource. And I also want to just comment that I'm not surprised that a lot of people aren't familiar with all these resources inside the portal, and I myself included. I think this exercise for me has revealed a lot of information that I didn't know was readily available to us. So I hope you guys are all finding some good utility and in future resources you can rely on in that portal. So thanks, Amanda.
Yep, thank you, Kaylin. And Kaylin and Ruben were instrumental in helping us develop this. So, these resources that we're sharing with you, that they provided the insight to this. So Kaylin, Ruben, we can't thank you enough on this. Brian.
And yes, if you don't mind, there was a question that was asked. Jane asked a question concerning how do states provide input to the information shared in a map. What I will say is, where that management action plan comes from for a property is out of the data systems within the Corps of Engineers, and that's why you see it tied to the annual report to Congress. So this is data that the Corps of Engineers has within its system as to its knowledge set for a given site. As Kaylin mentioned, if you were to get a phone call and you had no idea of the site, but somebody said, hey, there's this Camp Swift, what do you know about it? TCEQ. You could go here and at least get a quick rundown of what projects, what's happened at this site, kind of some rudimentary planning. Of course, if there was information in here that you felt needed updating, please coordinate through your FUDS forum point of contact. That POC list that we provided as part of this training is very helpful to reach out to those districts to get that data updated, because they need to update it in FUDS, because this report is actually pulled from their data set per the annual report to Congress. So it is date stamped. So sometimes it's a little out of date because of that date stamp. But if there is something that is not exactly as you believe it to be, then please reach out to that POC and try to get that. We're always looking to improve our processes as well as improve our information about a site. So if the property, as we know it, is no longer federal property, it got sold or it got transferred in some way, then we'd like to know that and we'll update our map. Now, it should not be confused, because I know this early on in my history with the FUDS program, I used to confuse these two things. So this management action plan that you're pulling out is different than some states have what's called the state management action plan, which talks about prioritization. So that is a different document. And that definitely is talked about at the FUDS forum, local or regional discussions that you may be having with your districts, so that you can work on what priorities and provide that input to the district as to where we should prioritize one project over another project. And then that gets balanced, of course, over multiple states within a district, and then over multiple states within the entire FUDS program. So hopefully that has helped to clarify a little bit how you can make input to the map. Definitely, if there's something that you don't agree with in there, or you think you have additional information that might help with decision making, please get with the your local FUDS district and get that updated in FUDSMIS.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brian. And Kaylin, you hit it on the head. There's no way that you are going to remember all of these sites that you are tracking. So that map right there gives you that resources at your fingertips that you can pull up instantly. Now that you know where it is, you can find out a lot of stuff. As Brian mentioned, though, it could be a couple of years behind. We're reporting on 2022 information right here, but we're in 2025 right now. So maybe you've gone through a delineation, and that would be a bit of a change from what you're seeing on those kind of things. But great conversations right there to have. Thanks again, Kaylin. All right, Southeast region, you guys are up. Last but certainly not least right here. All right, where do you find the Munitions Response Site Prioritization Protocol, the MRSPP, or your MRS scores? A lot of people call it different things. We're not calling it Mrs. PP though. And note, guys, this is only for MMRP projects that we're diving into. This does not apply to your IRP HTRW because those are evaluated using the RRSE. So how do you track the full inventory for your site too? Looking in the chat, if you're with the Southeast region, where do you find those MRSPPs or your MRS scores? We're interested to see what you guys are using and how do you track the full inventory for your area. All right, instead of this time using the FUDS portal, we're going to go over, yeah, LDEQ, that is a great guess, and we have that on that management action plan that I just showed you, fantastic, but we're going to Denix this time to check them out. This is, you know, hosted from Brian's side of the things, but let's see what kind of information that we have right there. All right, munitions response site inventory page. Lots of good resources on that left-hand side, but we're going to show you how this houses all of the MMRP sites, not just for FUDS, but for all of DoD sites. Throughout, when you click on that drop-down link right there, you'll note that all of the states and territories are listed right there. And we're going to use Camp Blanding in Florida as our example. So we're going to search by state, and you'll see once you hit enter, for Florida, we have Air Force components, we have Army, we have Army National Guard, we have FUDS and Navy. But we are going to pop back up to the FUD section, and we are going to go to Camp Blanding. And so for this, you'll see that there's 3 sections for each of these components. There's the FFID on the left-hand side. That is that Federal Facilities Identification. That's associated with your KBCRS. And then we have the information, that's your property or the installation level. And then we have the maps column. But we're going to click on that property and see the projects. So let's click on Camp Blanding right there. And then if we scroll up, all of those site IDs, those things right there, that's how many projects we have. That OEW is the designation for MMRP. And then the next column, we have the MRSPP scores. We also outline the acreage per project in that second to last or third to last column. But let's go back and go look at that property map. Now, I will say we are striving to update the property maps per OSD requirements. And the Camp Blanding map is going to show you where each project is in relation to the FUDS property boundary. It also provides a lot of other information. Depending on which web browser you're using, sometimes it just automatically pulls up. Sometimes it pulls up into a second window. And then other times you might have to download it before you can open it. All right, here's a property map for Camp Blanding. We've got lots of stuff that we have to put on these property maps per OSD requirements, such as state and county names, state and county boundaries. We also have to use the KBCRS site ID. For us, for FUDS, that is that FFID right there. And then the second part is that project and then OEW at the end listed right here. Then you can see we've got all of our property boundaries right there. And if we have state, federal lands on there, we also have to call that out. Lots of good information right there. Like I said, I'm being very transparent with our FUDS program. We are working actively to get these updated. So if we are missing one or not up to speed on the map, just know that we do. We're actively working on them. All right, now let's tie everything together. Dave mentioned earlier about the high priorities, the sequencing, the evaluation. So we've got the MRSPPs, the maps, those management action plans we talked about. We just looked at the munitions response site inventory on Denix, and then we've got the FUDS work plan. Recall from earlier, Dave mentioned if you've got a score of 1 through 4, according to that OSD memo, we've got a high priority. And we've got a goal that we've got to achieve response complete on 20% of it by 2030. So in collaboration with our stakeholders, those projects, we are actively engaging those in the work plan. So let's continue on with Camp Blanding, and let's pull that information that we just saw from that munitions response site inventory. Of all of those projects that we have for Camp Blanding on the MMRP side, we have 2, 4, 6, 7, 9, 11, and 12 that fit that high priority score where we have MRS scores between 1 through 4. What does that really mean? What does an MRSVP or MRS score really tell us? Well, yes, it is a high score if we've got, or a high priority if we've got scores 1 through 4. But let's take it a little bit further. If we have a numerical score, meaning if we have an MRS score of 1 through 8, that means we have not achieved response complete. But there are 3 alternative scores that you might see on that Denix munitions response site. You could have evaluation pending. You can have no known or suspected hazard, NCOSH, or no longer required, NLR. If we have evaluation pending, what that typically means is that we need to gather additional data, such as maybe sampling needs to be conducted in the next phase to finish out that health hazard evaluation module. If you have evaluation pending, you have not achieved response complete. Now, NCOSH can go 2 ways. Maybe at the end of the SI or maybe at the end of the ROD, you have no unacceptable risk. So if you see an NCOSH for that, that means you have achieved response complete. But you could also have an NCOSH MRS score based on maybe your explosive hazards module. It had an NCOSH rating based on that you only had small arms ammunition only. There's an Army policy that if you have small arms ammunition only, you have to override that EHE module to NCOSH. You probably don't have a response complete if it's only based on that. For NLR, that means no longer required. That means that on your munitions response site, that means your DoD has conducted a response. All remedial action objectives set out, in that ROD or decision document for the MRS have been achieved, and you have no further action except for your long-term management and your reoccurring reviews, 5 years. This means you've achieved response complete. We don't need to put this in prioritization anymore with NLR because we are required to do those 5-year reviews. We're required to do those LTMs. But with an NLR, we've achieved response complete and we don't need to prioritize it anymore. All right, comparing that munitions response site inventory that's on the left-hand side, we've got all the yellow highlighted with a high priority score. And then on the right-hand side, we've got that management action plan that I showed you. Depending on when the annual report to Congress is updated, there could be a few discrepancies, such as, you saw earlier, I was pulling some 2022 information from the FUDS portal, but since then we've updated it to the 2023. But they're going to be very similar. The FUDS map in your FUDS annual forum will provide you the most up-to-date MRS score. But let's continue to focus on those high priority score projects. You've got your MRS on the left, your map on the right. This is showing the same information. But why do we want to go to that munitions response on inventory? Well, the advantage of that versus going to the FUDS portal is so that you can see all of your DoD inventory right there. Looking on the left-hand side, we've got that munitions response site inventory, and then I have on the right-hand side the work plan from the FUDS portal. So we're trying to meet that OSD goal of achieving response complete of 20% of the MRSs by 2030, and we've got to prioritize these sites. From those 7 high priority sites on the left-hand side, we've got 3 of them in our work plan. Hopefully all of these overviews have given you a little bit more resources that you all can use. But as you've seen throughout today, the FUDS program is more than just a process. It's a commitment to our collaboration with you. From the initial identification of a property and project to the final cleanup decisions, our stakeholders, you guys play a critical role in every step of the way. We strive to progress forward with meaningful engagement. And the key takeaway is this: FUDS is a partnership. Our success not only depends on meaningful expertise in statutory compliance, but also on trust, on transparency, and teamwork. Together, we're restoring these properties and building safer communities, one project at a time. On behalf of Dave and I, we thank you for your attention and your time today. We truly appreciate having each of you. And to our guest speakers, Kaylin and Ruben, we really appreciate having you guys speak too. Kaylin, I'm going to turn it over to you now, sir, to share your insight.
Yeah, so the largest value to me as a state regulator with kind of having this knowledge of MRS scores right at our fingertips is just helping steer our priorities in a way that can align with Army Corps' program goals. So when we're evaluating our state top priorities, of course, prior to submitting them to USAs for the work plan consideration, reviewing this information here that she outlined allows us to see how our priorities may align with the MRS score. Of course, we can review this to also determine if we think that score that is listed on there is agreeable to us, or if we want to test the assumptions that the Corps made at one point in time to develop these scores. And we want to make sure that they're still accurate or require their own updating based on our knowledge of the site, which in turn may increase the priority and get lumped into the sequencing at a higher rate. In Michigan, we've had disagreed with MRS score assumptions, and we have spent state dollars in an attempt to gather evidence that would have supported an increased priority ranking. And it's important to note that when Army Corps determines an MRS, they're required to engage with all stakeholders and give them an opportunity to review and comment on how that MRS score is sequenced for response actions. But by maintaining a routine common knowledge of the MRS, the collaboration does not have to be limited to when these evaluations actually formally occur. As you referred to earlier, there's the OSD memo that outlines the prioritization. It's worth noting that it specifically calls out the tiers or the priority ranking that Amanda discussed previously, at which they consider target response complete goals through fiscal year 2030 and 2035. Some of this was covered, but just through that commitment outlined in the memo, we can partner with them to hit these targets that they are striving for, while also getting, meaningful high-risk work completed in our state that may align with our priorities. So it's pretty handy to have that information just right there at our fingertips and keep a running knowledge of what our MRS scores look like and rank compared to one another. So with that, I think we can conclude our presentation. I just want to, in final thought, say, the state regulators really involved, the state regulators that have been involved in this, we really appreciate the commitment from Army Corps. We felt heard, we felt appreciated, and we felt like it was really integrated into the presentation. So really thank you for everybody for that. So turn back to you, Brian. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Kaylin. Really appreciate those words and support as far as pulling this material and the content and really building that focus and the audience. So hopefully you all found your teams and you worked well within your team and you felt you produced a great product. Though I would say that the Southeast with only 2 people answering may have let us down a little bit, but that's okay. I like the wild guess though. The wild guess was good for the FUDS portal. That was awesome because then we've switched right to DNEX. So, but I do want to take a little bit of time. I don't see any additional questions in the chat. And I'm curious if maybe if I could phone a friend and have Amanda come back on camera. I was going to do this. I promise, Amanda, before I put you on the hook and you're going to do like a live demonstration. But we had a lot of people put FUDS GIS into the comment box. So if you wouldn't mind opening the FUDS GIS and before she shares the content, I'm going to see if it's actually going to load for her, because I tried to load FUDS.mil on my end and it timed out. So otherwise I would have done it from my end, but I think it'd be good because we did have quite a few folks go, I'd go look in the GIS, and I want to highlight a little bit. So she's going out to the web, and hopefully we can go to the portal. We'll go to the GIS, and this is public. This is the public side. We are not in not something hidden behind a firewall. This is something that you all have access to. I would also, please, if you get a chance or an opportunity to sit with with Amy Stender with the Cold Regions Laboratory, who manages this data set for the Corps of Engineers. She offers quarterly training opportunities or webinars on this data set and how to use this data set. And you have a really good opportunity. Usually they are well attended, but they're well attended by about 50 people. And she allows people to come on and off microphone so you can ask specific questions. It's really awesome. So if you wouldn't mind going into, let me just go into New Mexico. We'll zoom in a little bit, Amanda. So all those dots represent something. So if she opens up the legend, it'll tell you what those dots are. And you'll see there. So the red stars are properties with projects. Green are properties with all projects at site closeout. And then the blue are property without projects, right? So you have that quick interaction there. If she zooms in a little further over towards Roswell, New Mexico, and this is, I'm going to test her geography and how well she loves 1990s TV, where Roswell, New Mexico is. It's kind of in the central eastern portion of the state. Go ahead and zoom on in to your right a little bit over there. You'll find Roswell. And we'll go with one of those, that red star to the south of Roswell.
You're really testing my geography right here. I have no idea where Roswell is. So help me out here, Brian.
Yeah, zoom out, zoom out. You've zoomed in too far now. Okay, so just, it's kind of in the center of your page. You'll see Roswell there. You see it there? Okay, so now let's click on the Air Force, or the former Walker Air Force Base, if you don't mind. So scroll down a little bit. You're zoomed. See, this is the beauty of a live demo. She loves it. So Amanda's loving me to tool her around. So, and then we can hit the zoom too, and that will kind of zoom us into this property. So this is the former Walker Air Force Base. This is an Air Force Base, or former Walker Air Force Base. It's near and dear to my heart. It's one of the first FUDS projects I ever visited as an employee of the Albuquerque district. A large strategic air command facility that operated up until 1967. There you see the polygon. It is now the Roswell Industrial Air Center, or REAC. And it's an airport as well as a lot of industrial, but you can see here's the munitions response sites on the GIS. You can also pull, if you go to click on at the bottom, Amanda, there's the little tab that opens the attributes, and you can actually see a lot of the same information you would pull from a map. So there's that little black. And now go ahead on down in your screen. She's going to kill me for this. There you go. So this is a lot of the attribute information. So we are looking at the former Walker Air Force Base, and you can scroll and you can see some of that information that would be contained in the map. You have it now as part of a table that's associated with a map. And there's different ways to use the GIS. You can actually produce maps out of the GIS. If somebody was to, you got on the hook, you need to find out what you know about Roswell, the former Walker Air Force Base in Roswell or outside of Roswell, New Mexico, because they're looking to do whatever they're looking to do. You could quickly gather this information and be able to produce a map and get these things out. So,
or go back to our management action plan. Yes.
Yep.
Lots of good ways. So Brian, since you're here too, I know Ruben brought it up, but we also have some information on IRM. That data set's also there. So if you're interested in sharing that, because you know your congressional leaders, your government leaders are going to get all that information in conjunction with you, all our stakeholders. But if you're looking to see what they have on there, click on those and you can pull that information up too.
Yeah, and you'll need to zoom out.
The 3R safety guide.
Yeah.
Yep. But lots of good information right there.
So I just wanted to quickly, because we had a little bit of time, we were awesomely, we were ahead of schedule a little bit. So, but I wanted to throw that little activity in, right? Thanks to everybody for keeping us a little ahead of schedule. So training opportunity, great question. I'm going to have to hand over to EMCX. We will send that out as part of, well, that's a due out to me, but it really, we'll figure out when that next FUDS GIS training opportunity is. I know she was doing them on a regular basis, but I'll confirm that with the DRP on how regular she's still being able to do that. But we'll get that out to you as far as when those next GIS opportunities are, because I think it's a very powerful tool that people should be aware of. It's the first place I go at OSD when I get asked by my management and leadership, I want to know what the FUDS program has going on in this region of the world or this region of the United States. I just go into the GIS and start looking at those sites. Okay, we have Lisa asking when a FUDS site range fan overlaps with an MMRP OU on a DoD MPL site. I'm assuming when you say DoD MPL site, you're talking about an active. What happens? Who has lead, etc. So first right of refusal would be that DoD active component, and for the most part, the DoD active component will be progressing with the site. That there are a few instances where that is not the case, but those are by policy. But for the most part, that is going to be the active component. If that, please give me a thumbs up if that answered your question on when the range fans overlap. It's usually that active component has that first right of refusal. Thank you. And yes, Fort Ord is a BRAC facility, so you wouldn't find Fort Ord if you went looking for Fort Ord under FUDS. You wouldn't find it unless you might find a few ranges or features around Fort Ord that are FUDS eligible that transferred prior to 1986. But Fort Ord in itself is part of the BRAC process. So, and it maintains a similar GIS for all of its range fans and information system. All right, other questions for me? I will, maybe we can go back to the slide deck. Sorry, Amanda, if you want to throw that back up so we can get to the survey that last. I will thank everybody. Oh, XDocs, there's many different things, right? Yeah, so XDocs, I think we were blasting XDocs a little bit when we said we really like the Air Force system. But yes, that is, XDocs is a very good system for states to get a login and be able to link to the documents on a given site for sure. That is a 201, 301 level discussion as far as getting those linkages to XDocs, but that is definitely a good place for the repository of the documents in the history of a site. If you're trying to see it from document to document and letter to letter, that should be on XDocs. All right, if we want to go to 61. So thank you all very much. Again, here's the link to the survey. Please go take the survey. I'd love to be over about 30% responses on the survey. Again, it's not very painful. It's a Google Doc. Please put in your info. It really helps us understand what you'd like to see next. We do plan as part of FUDS that we understand. This was we just skimmed the surface of FUDS. I know it seemed like a lot of information really quick, but we wanted to provide this higher level discussion about eligibility and some of the processes of where you find things to just start understanding FUDS, where you find the handbook, how you figure out what your MRSPP scores, some of those things. But please take the survey. If there are particular topics you'd really like us to dive deeper into, other than ARARs, because Kaylin then would revolt. Just kidding, Kaylin. No, if we need, as an example, if we needed to have a discussion or a webinar on a particular topic, please offer it up and we'll evaluate how we best handle that in either a webinar setting, or is it something that needs to be teed up for the National FUDS Forum? I will lay out here that we are beginning the planning for me and my mouse in my pocket, right? Or not me, because I have 4 days left, but the OSD and with working with the FUDS and the FUDS program and the Army are starting the planning for the National FUDS Forum Conference, looking at June of 2027. So to start pulling the topics and all the content together for that. I know that seems like a long ways away, but it happens really fast. And when it comes time to organize that conference, get all the logistics worked out and get the content built, it's important that we have that planning, but I just wanted to lay that out there. So if you plan to be around and through the June of 2027, we welcome and hope to see many of you. I know all of you won't be able to attend. There'll be some limitations on who can come and how many and all those things, but it is a very good conference to exchange ideas and provide feedback, lessons learned on the FUDS program and how we work forward. So please take that survey. We will definitely use your input. Caitlin, in all caps, screaming at me about ARAR's training. Thank you, Caitlin. All right. With that, I'll turn you back a whopping 5 minutes extra, but I really appreciate your attention. We really held on to quite a few of you. So I think top, I saw a little over 250. So thank you all. Hopefully we'll get some good surveys back. Hopefully you found the content very helpful. And we appreciate your time. Thank you so much.